So prosecutors accuse the officers of escort services to drug traffickers in exchange for bribes.
8:17 a.m., January 22nd, 2026, San Antonio, Texas. A refrigerated truck rolled toward a routine checkpoint on Interstate 35. The driver sipped coffee. The cargo manifest read, "Fresh produce destined for Walmart distribution." Nothing looked wrong, but a K9 unit named Rex started circling the truck's rear axle. His handler watched the dog's behavior shift. Ears back, tail rigid, paws scratching steel. Something was hidden. The truck belonged to Atlas National Logistics, a company with 150 big rigs moving goods across 12 states. On paper, it was legitimate. Contracts with Costco, Walmart, Target. Clean inspections dating back 3 years. The agents opened the hydraulic compartment. 100 kilograms of crystal methamphetamine. Street value $8.3 million. Vacuum-sealed bricks stacked beneath a false floor designed to fool X-ray scanners. This wasn't a random smuggler. This was infrastructure. If you want to see how deep this network goes, hit like so this story reaches more people who need to know the truth. The driver didn't run. He didn't panic. He sat in the cab with his hands on the steering wheel, eyes forward, waiting. His name was Miguel Ortega, 34 years old, clean record, hired 6 months earlier through a staffing agency in Houston. When agents questioned him, his answers were calm. Too calm. "I drive where they tell me. I don't ask questions." He believed he was transporting produce. The paperwork supported that story, but someone had engineered the truck's undercarriage to carry a second cargo. Someone who understood logistics, engineering, and law enforcement procedures. Miguel was a pawn. The real players were still moving freely across the country, Oz hidden inside a system built to look normal. Atlas National Logistics had been operating since 2019. Founded by a man named Robert Chen, a former freight broker with connections stretching from California to New York, the company grew fast. Too fast. Within 2 years, Atlas controlled warehouse space in Dallas, Phoenix, Atlanta, and Newark. Its trucks moved through 12 states without raising suspicion, but the DEA had been watching. In October 2025, agents intercepted encrypted communications between Atlas drivers and an unknown coordinator using the alias El Mapache. The messages referenced special deliveries and priority loads that never appeared on official manifests. The surveillance intensified. By December 2025, federal investigators had identified 47 Atlas trucks equipped with hidden compartments, hydraulic systems, false floors, insulated chambers designed to block thermal imaging. These weren't amateur modifications. They were professional, expensive. Someone with serious money was funding this operation. The deeper agents dug, the more connections surfaced. Atlas had contracts with legitimate retailers, but it also had shadow clients. Shell companies registered in Delaware and Wyoming with untraceable ownership. One shell company, Horizon Freight Solutions, had received $12.7 million in wire transfers from accounts linked to the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. This wasn't just a trucking company. This was a cartel supply line embedded inside American commerce. Comment exposed below if you're ready to see what happened next. The command center was in a nondescript office building in San Antonio. The FBI and DEA agents worked alongside Texas Department of Public Safety troopers and Homeland Security investigators. On the walls, maps showed Atlas truck routes overlaid with drug seizure data. Every red pin represented a suspected delivery point. There were 73 pins. The operation had a name, Iron Highway. The goal wasn't just to seize drugs, it was to dismantle the entire network, from the drivers to the financiers to the corrupt officials who made it possible. Because Atlas didn't survive on engineering alone. It survived because people in power protected it. According to federal court documents unsealed in March 2026, investigators found evidence linking 23 U.S. officials to the operation. Customs inspectors, county clerks, a state legislator in Arizona, a federal border agent in Laredo. They weren't all directly involved. But they created gaps. Inspections delayed, permits approved without review, tips that disappeared before reaching supervisors. One customs inspector, Daniel Ruiz, had flagged Atlas trucks 14 times over 18 months. Every time, his reports were downgraded to low priority by a supervisor named Linda Vasquez. Vasquez received $47,000 in cash payments between June 2024 and January 2026. The money came from a consulting company that didn't exist. This was protection bought in small, careful increments, the kind that doesn't look like corruption until you step back and see the pattern. And the pattern was undeniable. Atlas had learned to weaponize bureaucracy. It didn't bribe everyone. It didn't need to. It only needed to slow the system down just enough to keep moving. But on January 22, 2026, that system caught up. And the raid order came at 4:47 a.m. Agents received final briefings in darkened parking lots across 5 states: Texas, Arizona, California, Georgia, New York. The targets: 19 Atlas warehouses, 8 private residences, and the company's headquarters in Houston. This wasn't a single bust. It was a synchronized strike designed to prevent warning calls and destroy evidence before suspects could react. At exactly 6 a.m., teams moved. In Dallas, a battering ram struck the door of an Atlas warehouse on Singleton Boulevard. The metal buckled. Agents poured inside. Forklifts sat idle. Pallets of boxed goods lined the walls. Everything looked normal, until agents found the false wall at the back of the loading bay. Behind it, a climate-controlled storage room. 340 kilograms of methamphetamine, 89 kilograms of fentanyl. $2.1 million in cash bundled in Home Depot bags. In Phoenix, agents stormed a residential compound owned by a man named Carlos Medina. He was Atlas's West Coast operations manager. Inside the house, ledgers documenting shipments, burner phones, a laptop with encrypted files containing names, routes, and payment schedules. Medina tried to run. He made it 30 feet before agents tackled him in the driveway. In Houston, federal agents surrounded Atlas headquarters at dawn. Employees arriving for work were turned away. The building was locked down. Inside Robert Chen's office, agents found something that would change the entire investigation. If this shocks you, hit like now. Chen's office was pristine. Mahogany desk, framed awards from the Texas Freight Association, a photo of Chen shaking hands with a congressman at a logistics summit. But inside his desk drawer, agents found a ledger. Handwritten, detailed, damning. It listed every shipment, every payment, every official who had been paid to look the other way. Daniel Ruiz, the customs inspector, $47,000. Linda Vasquez, his supervisor, $83,000. A county clerk in Hidalgo County, $31,000. A state legislator in Arizona who expedited zoning permits, $120,000. The ledger went back 4 years. This wasn't opportunistic corruption. It was systematic. Chen had built a machine, and every cog in that machine had a price. But the most disturbing entry was near the end of the ledger. A payment of $250,000 labeled Federal Liaison, no name, just a reference code, FL-09. Investigators are still trying to identify who FL-09 is. Someone inside a federal agency. Someone with the authority to influence investigations from the inside. That name hasn't been made public yet. The raid netted 181 arrests across 5 states. Drivers, warehouse managers, company executives, and 11 public officials. The drug seizures were staggering. 52 tons of narcotics. Methamphetamine, fentanyl, cocaine, heroin. Enough to supply illegal markets for months. Cash seized, $19.4 million. Vehicles, 63 trucks, 14 cars, 2 private planes. Real estate, 9 properties valued at $8.7 million. But the human cost was harder to quantify. According to the CDC, methamphetamine-related overdose deaths increased 34% between 2020 and 2025. Networks like Atlas fed that epidemic. Every truck that rolled through a checkpoint undetected was another shipment reaching communities in crisis. Families destroyed, lives ended, trust eroded. The arrest of Robert Chen made headlines. But the deeper story was about the officials who enabled him. When a customs inspector takes money to look away, it's not just a personal failure, it's a betrayal of every community depending on law enforcement to protect them. Type yes if you believe justice matters more than money. The trial began in April 2026 in federal court in San Antonio. Robert Chen faced 47 charges, including drug trafficking, money laundering, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit bribery. His defense argued he was a businessman who lost control of his company to criminal elements. He claimed ignorance. The prosecution presented the ledger. Every entry, every name, every payment. Chen had personally signed checks to shell companies used to funnel cash to corrupt officials. He had attended meetings where cartel representatives outlined delivery schedules. One he knew. On June 14, 2026, the jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing is scheduled for September 2026. Prosecutors are seeking life in prison without parole. But Chen wasn't the only one facing consequences. Daniel Ruiz, the customs inspector, pleaded guilty to accepting bribes. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Linda Vasquez, his supervisor, went to trial. She was convicted and sentenced to 18 years. The Arizona state legislator who expedited zoning permits resigned before charges were filed. He later pleaded guilty to corruption charges and received 8 years. The county clerk in Hidalgo County is awaiting trial, and FL09, the mysterious federal liaison, remains unidentified. That investigation is ongoing. Share this story so more people understand how corruption spreads. The impact of Operation Iron Highway extended beyond courtrooms. Atlas National Logistics filed for bankruptcy in March 2026. Its assets were liquidated. Legitimate employees lost their jobs. But the operation sent a message through the criminal underworld. Cartels had believed they could hide inside American infrastructure indefinitely. They believed money and connections were enough. Iron Highway proved otherwise. According to DEA Administrator Ann Milgram, the operation disrupted cartel supply lines across the Southwest. Drug prices in Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico increased by 40% in the months following the raids. That's not a victory, it's a disruption. Because cartels adapt. Already, intelligence suggests new networks are forming. Smaller operations, more decentralized, harder to detect. The fight doesn't end with one bust. It continues in warehouses, border crossings, and encrypted communications that investigators are still working to decrypt. The question isn't whether law enforcement can win. It's whether they can stay ahead of criminal organizations that learned from every failure, and whether the systems designed to protect communities can be trusted not to betray them again. Because the real lesson of Atlas National Logistics isn't about trucks or drugs. It's about trust. When officials sworn to uphold the law sell their authority to criminals, they don't just enable crime. They erode the foundation of every institution that depends on integrity. Courts, borders, inspections, oversight, all of it collapses when trust is for sale. Comment justice below if you believe corruption should be met with the harshest penalties. The investigation raised uncomfortable questions about how cartels have evolved. This wasn't violence in the streets. It wasn't turf wars or shootouts. It was logistics, paperwork, shell companies, wire transfers. Modern cartels operate like corporations. They hire consultants. They use encrypted apps. They exploit regulatory gaps. And they rely on one critical asset, invisibility. Atlas succeeded for years because it looked legitimate. Its trucks had company logos. Its warehouses had business licenses. Its employees believed they worked for a normal freight company. That's the new model. Hide in plain sight. Use the economy's own infrastructure. Move product as if it's commerce. According to a 2025 report by the Rand Corporation, transnational criminal organizations increasingly embed themselves in legal supply chains to evade detection. They don't avoid the system. They become part of it. That makes them harder to detect and harder to dismantle. Because shutting down Atlas doesn't mean shutting down the demand, and it doesn't mean cartels stop trying. It just means they adapt. The next network will be smarter, more careful, better hidden, and investigators will have to evolve faster. If you want to stay informed about operations like this, hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. By mid-2026, federal agencies had begun implementing new protocols designed to prevent another Atlas. Increased scrutiny of freight companies with rapid growth. Enhanced background checks for logistics personnel. Mandatory audits of companies with contracts involving cross-border shipments, but protocols only work if they're enforced. And enforcement depends on people who can't be bought. That's the fragile center of the entire system. One compromised inspector, one delayed report, one supervisor who looks the other way. That's all it takes to create a gap large enough for a cartel to operate through. The Atlas case exposed how thin the line is between security and vulnerability, and it revealed something many people don't want to confront. Corruption isn't always dramatic. It's not always briefcases full of cash or threats of violence. Sometimes it's just $47,000 paid over 18 months to a customs inspector who has student loans and a mortgage. Sometimes it's a supervisor who doesn't ask too many questions because asking questions creates problems. Sometimes it's a system so overwhelmed that gaps become inevitable. And cartels know exactly how to exploit those gaps. Comment your thoughts below on how we stop this from happening again. The story of Atlas National Logistics is not finished. Trials are ongoing. Investigations continue. FL09 has not been identified. And somewhere, another network is being built. Maybe it's a shipping company. Maybe it's a produce distributor. Maybe it's a logistics startup with venture capital funding and a sleek website. It will look legitimate. It will pass inspections. It will hire people who believe they're working for a normal business, and it will move drugs. Because as long as demand exists, supply will follow. That's the brutal economics of the drug trade. Operation Iron Highway was a victory, but it wasn't the end. It was a battle in a war that doesn't have a finish line. The question facing law enforcement, policymakers, and communities is simple. Can we build systems strong enough to resist corruption? Can we stay ahead of organizations that have billions of dollars, sophisticated technology, and no moral boundaries? Can we protect the integrity of institutions that the entire country depends on? Those aren't hypothetical questions. They're the reality facing America right now, and the answer will determine whether operations like Iron Highway become the norm or the exception. If you believe this fight is worth continuing, hit like so this message spreads. Share this video before it gets buried. Subscribe so you see the next chapter of this story when it breaks. And comment one word below: accountability. Because that's what this is really about. Not drugs, not trucks, not money. Accountability. For the cartels who poison communities. For the officials who enable them. For the systems that allow corruption to spread unchecked. This is only the beginning.